I got it 2 days prior to posting Ruby online for Craigslist for rehome.
And on what date did you post?
I posted her on the 7th of August.
That's not what she said.
The courtroom fell into stunned silence when a woman calmly described how a loose pit bull nearly killed her tiny dog during a routine morning walk. But what seemed like a straightforward dog attack case was about to unravel into something far more dramatic. Because sitting across the courtroom was a young woman who insisted the dog wasn't hers anymore. She claimed she had already given it away. The problem? Judge Judy wasn't buying a single word of it. On that day, the courtroom felt unusually tense, the kind of tension that hangs in the air before a storm. The plaintiff, Miss Davis, sat clutching a stack of veterinary bills and photographs. Her face showed the exhaustion of someone who had replayed a traumatic moment in her mind hundreds of times. Across from her sat Miss Keese, young, calm, confident, perhaps a little too confident. She believed she had an explanation for everything, and Judge Judy had already noticed.
What began as a dispute over $600 in veterinary expenses was about to become a masterclass in how a story falls apart when the facts refuse to cooperate. Judge Judy leaned forward. "Tell me what happened." The room became quiet. Miss Davis took a deep breath. She explained that it was early morning on August 27th. Like every day, she was walking her beloved rat terrier through the neighborhood. It was part of their daily routine, an hour-long walk, peaceful, predictable. Nothing seemed unusual, until it did. They were approaching an elementary school, only a block from home. Then disaster struck. Out of nowhere, a pit bull appeared. No warning, no leash, no owner, just sudden chaos. The dog rushed directly toward her small terrier. Within seconds, screams filled the street. Not human screams, her dog's screams. The horrifying sound every pet owner fears.
The audience shifted uneasily as she described the attack. The pit bull latched onto her tiny dog. Miss Davis threw herself into the struggle. She tried pulling, pushing, kicking, anything, but the pit bull wouldn't let go. Then she lost her balance. She hit the ground hard. For one terrifying moment, the attacking dog shifted its attention from the terrier to her. The entire courtroom seemed frozen. Viewers could almost picture the scene unfolding in slow motion. A helpless owner, a terrified pet, a powerful dog completely out of control. And then, somehow, her little terrier escaped. The frightened animal slipped out of its harness and ran home. Miss Davis lay on the pavement, shaken and injured. Her insulin pump had been ripped loose during the fall. She scrambled to recover it. Then she turned around, and that's when she noticed something strange. A young man was standing nearby, holding the pit bull by its collar. A large pink collar, one detail that would later become crucial. She asked the obvious question.
"Is that your dog?" The young man immediately answered, "No, not my dog, not his responsibility, not his problem." At least, that's what he wanted her to believe. But those words would eventually become one of many pieces in a puzzle Judge Judy was determined to solve. The attack had already caused serious injuries. Her dog required emergency treatment, then surgery. The veterinary bills piled up. Fear turned into frustration, and frustration turned into determination. Someone had to be responsible. The question was simple. Who owned the pit bull? Animal control eventually arrived. According to reports, the dog was still being restrained by bystanders when officers reached the scene. The pit bull was wearing that same distinctive pink collar, the same collar Miss Davis remembered, the same collar that would become impossible to explain away later. Judge Judy quickly moved to the central issue: ownership. Because under the law, if the dog belonged to someone, that person would be responsible for the damages. And that's when Miss Keese's story entered the spotlight.
The judge already knew something important. The dog was microchipped, and the microchip was registered in Miss Keese's name. The courtroom murmured. That's not the kind of evidence that disappears easily. Judge Judy looked directly at the defendant. You were the owner of this dog at one point? Yes, ma'am. The answer came quickly. Too quickly. The defendant admitted she had taken possession of the dog earlier that month. She had it vaccinated. She had it chipped. Everything was registered to her. There was no dispute about that. But then came the defense, the explanation, the story that supposedly removed all responsibility from her shoulders. According to Miss Keese, she had already given the dog away before the attack happened. A man named Michael had taken ownership. If true, her case might survive. If false, it was over. Judge Judy listened carefully, very carefully, because she had heard thousands of stories, and she knew exactly what a collapsing timeline sounds like. Miss Keese explained that her mother originally rescued the pit bull. Later, she took the dog into her own home. Then she claimed her landlord informed her that pit bulls weren't allowed on the property, so she decided to rehome the dog. Sounds reasonable, at first. Then Judge Judy started asking questions. Simple questions. Questions that should have had simple answers. When did you get the dog? August 4th. When did you post the Craigslist advertisement? August 7th. Judge Judy paused. Something didn't fit. The judge reviewed the timeline, then looked back up. Her eyes narrowed. The audience sensed it immediately. The trap was closing. Because according to Miss Keese's own written statement, she didn't receive notice from her landlord until much later. Yet somehow she was already trying to get rid of the dog almost immediately after taking ownership. The contradiction hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. Judge Judy's voice became sharper. If you hadn't been told you couldn't keep the dog, why were you already advertising it for a new owner? The defendant scrambled. Suddenly, her confident answers became complicated explanations. Weight restrictions, apartment conversations, future concerns, technicalities, excuses. The more she talked, the less convincing she sounded. Judge Judy wasn't interested in excuses. She wanted facts, and the facts were getting uglier. The defendant claimed someone named Michael responded to the ad almost immediately. Judge Judy followed the thread. When did he contact you? 4 hours after I posted. Interesting. Very interesting. Because now a new problem appeared. If Michael contacted her on August 7th, why did it take more than a week for the transfer to happen? The timeline stretched. The story bent. The logic disappeared. The audience could practically see Judge Judy assembling the pieces, one by one, like a detective solving a mystery. Then came another devastating question. You communicated with Michael during this entire period? Yes. By phone and text? Yes. So you had his phone number? Yes. Judge Judy raised an eyebrow. The courtroom erupted with anticipation because everyone knew what was coming next. Do you still have it? No, I didn't save it. Convenient. Extremely convenient. A mysterious buyer. No records, no phone number, no witness, no proof. The audience chuckled. Even Judge Judy seemed unimpressed. The defendant's story was becoming harder and harder to believe. Then the judge returned to the detail that nobody could escape. The pink collar. That bright pink collar seen during the attack. The same collar Miss Keese admitted belonged to the dog while it was in her possession.
According to her story, Michael had supposedly owned the dog for days before the attack, yet the dog was still wearing the same pink collar. Judge Judy delivered the question that shattered whatever remained of the defense. You expect me to believe a man who adopts an adult pit bull keeps it running around with a big pink collar?
Laughter rippled through the courtroom. Even the bailiff couldn't hide his reaction, because everyone understood what the judge was saying. The story didn't make sense. Not logically, not practically, not at all. The defendant laughed nervously, but nervous laughter wasn't evidence, and evidence was exactly what Judge Judy cared about. The turning point had arrived. The power in the courtroom shifted completely. Moments earlier, Miss Keese still had a chance. Now, the outcome felt inevitable. Judge Judy leaned back. Her decision was made. She had watched the contradictions, heard the excuses, examined the timeline, evaluated the credibility, and she wasn't convinced, not even close. Then came the words every courtroom drama builds toward, the verdict. You are responsible for her vet bills, because I don't believe you. Just like that, the defense collapsed. No dramatic objection, no miraculous evidence, no last-minute rescue, only reality. Judge Judy concluded that the defendant remained responsible for the dog and the damages it caused. The veterinary expenses totaled $602.50. Judgment for the plaintiff. The case was over. Ms. Davis finally received the justice she had been seeking since that terrifying morning. Her small dog had survived, the medical bills would be covered, and accountability had finally caught up with the person Judge Judy believed was responsible. As the parties prepared to leave the courtroom, one lesson lingered in the air. Stories can be rehearsed, excuses can be crafted, timelines can be manipulated. But when facts refuse to cooperate, the truth has a way of exposing itself. And on this day, a pink collar, a missing phone number, and a timeline full of contradictions were all Judge Judy needed to uncover what really happened. Because in her courtroom, the loudest evidence isn't always a document. Sometimes it's a story that simply doesn't make sense.